Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Marc, and it is a blessing to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and we would love to come alongside you with resources, equipping, and prayer for your life. Head on over to harvesttoyou.org. If you would go over to Nehemiah chapter number 11, we are entering the third and final major section of the book of Nehemiah. The first 6 chapters cover the construction of the walls and gates. Very practical, lots of leadership lessons, focuses on Nehemiah almost exclusively. As you get into chapter number 7, you have a 4-chapter segment that begins to focus its attention in a broader way on the community at large, specifically on the spiritual revival that takes place. And you begin to see rejoicing and repentance and renewal spiritually. And then you enter the last major section, 11, 12, and 13. And this really enumerates for us the organization of the community. This is the section of Nehemiah that gets the least amount of press. Oftentimes you will hear the book presented and these chapters will be left off in large part or in whole, and you'll see why. There's lots of lists, lots of names as we move through these chapters, but there's still stuff for us to glean here as we begin to understand that in the community, their defenses are restored and their senses spiritually are restored. And what are they now going to do? So if you would, look at verse number 1. You begin to see this idea that the mission is first and their preferences are second. Verse number 1 tells us, the rulers of the people dwelt at Jerusalem, meaning the leaders had already moved into, or perhaps were prior of already rooted in Jerusalem, but the leaders are there, they're dwelling in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people, they also cast lots. Now, casting lots is not something that we do very often nowadays, unless you're a huge Survivor fan and you watch Tribal Council, where occasionally they go to rocks and they have to cast lots. It's what they're doing. We would have our own iterations of this, where perhaps we would flip a coin and play heads or tails. You have a decision that you need to make and you can't make up your mind, so heads or tails, and that calls it. Perhaps you would do paper, rock, scissors. I know that was a big staple of our home growing up, and it's a staple with my children, that if you have something that's semi-trivial that you can't decide, where do we want to go to dinner, and 2 kids really want to go to Olive Garden, the other 2 want to go to Red Robin, then we may make them play paper, rock, scissors for it. Whoever wins gets to pick. So we have these sorts of games that we play. Oftentimes we do them just as chance or fate. When you see casting lots in the Bible, it had a larger spiritual connotation. You could say that it was just fate, that they were drawing straws or casting lots, but they saw it as putting the decision in the hands of God. And you casted lots for 2 reasons. Reason 1 was there was something good and appealing, and there were so many people that wanted it that you had to whittle the group down and decide who got the chance or the opportunity or got to participate. For example, in Acts chapter number 1, they are down 1 man for an apostle. They're down Judas, and Judas isn't coming back. He already betrayed Jesus and he's dead. And they say, we need a replacement for Judas as part of the 12, and they have 2 really quality candidates in Joseph and Matthias, and they can't choose between the 2. They only have 1 spot to fill. And they say, why don't we cast lots and leave this decision in the hand of the Lord? And they cast lots and the lot falls on Matthias and he becomes an apostle. You would find this in a negative sense, however. Oftentimes lots is this way, where there is something that is not desirous at all. People do not want to do it, or it would be negative for them. And there's not a slew of people lining up to volunteer and say, pick me. So you have to decide who it is that's going to draw the short straw, right?
You see this in the story of Jonah, where there is this storm that comes, and even the pagan sailors somehow ascertain that this is God or the gods or something's happening here, and they cast lots to see whose fault it is that this evil has come upon us. And the lot falls on Jonah, and they say, "Tell us what's up, man." And he says, "Yep, I'm on the run from God." They are about to cast lots, and this is in the latter sense, the negative sense, where something is going to be required of people, and while people are willing, if they need to, no one wants to. No one is raising their hand to say, "Yeah, that's me. I just want to do this." You say, "What is this thing that needs done?" Into verse 1, to bring one of 10%, to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city, and 9 parts to dwell in other cities. If you remember from the story as we've walked through Nehemiah, Jerusalem is torn down, it's in shambles, and the defenses are no longer afforded to the people of the city. And as such, the vast majority of people have fled the city and have moved to other cities that are in Judah. Judah is the region. And they're in these other cities because while these other cities may not be up on a hill like Jerusalem was and is, and while they may not have had as strong of walls and gates as Jerusalem once did, the fortification that they have, even in the smaller cities, is greater than what Jerusalem had when it was in shambles. And so they say, let's move out, and people began to dissipate from the city of Jerusalem and began to set up shop and homes and plant gardens and establish farms and build houses in these other neighboring cities that were in the region of Judah. If you remember in chapter number 7, verse 4, we read right as we got to the spiritual renewal of the city, that the city was large and great, but the people were few therein, and the houses were not builded. Nehemiah had led the charge to get the perimeter secured, but all of the infill of businesses and the temple being rebuilt and temple worship and homes and inhabitants of the city coming back to life and flourishing again, that was all yet to be done. And what they say is 2 things. Number 1, the leaders went first, as good leadership would. The leaders moved into the city and they said, we're going to set the example and we're going to do this first. But then they needed 10% of the people from the neighboring communities to move into the city. And the way that they decided who would move in was they cast lots. And if it fell on you, you had a 1 in 10 chance, you had to pull up stakes and you had to move from what you had established and you had to move into the city. That's how it worked. That's not an appealing proposal. I mean, think about you, if you have a home that you have bought and established and you've made it your own and you've gotten used to the roads, albeit our roads are windy and curvy and hilly and frankly the worst out of anywhere I've ever lived, including the potholes at Pittsburgh Mills. I literally have a bent wheel on my vehicle right now from those stinking potholes that I gotta get fixed this week. I mean, you think about what you get used to though. You get used to dodging the potholes and you get used to where your coffee shop is and where you go grocery shopping and who your neighbors are, and pretend that your job or your spouse said, we got to move across the country. We're going to move to Oklahoma. We're going to move to California. And now what you're used to is gone, and the culture and the people and the demographics and the verbiage. I still remember moving here and people using terminology that I just had zero idea what they were talking about. The first time someone told me to rent up a room, I did not know what it meant. I did not, but you get used to it, right? Pretend that you have to move, and now there's 0 pierogies in California, but there's lots of taco trucks, okay? I don't know if this is heretical or not, but taco trucks are definitely greater than pierogies. So can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? All right. The rest of you are going to boo me and heckle me, but that's okay. I experienced this, right? We moved from California to here, and the move here was not that hard on me because I grew up in Kentucky and I'd lived in Arkansas and been around California. It was much harder on my wife, who was used to California her whole life and coming to what felt like a different world. The early days of that were anything but easy to make that adjustment. And these people here are being asked to make a major life change, to change where they're at and to move into what is a ghost town currently, and to do the hard work to reestablish, to build another house, to change your school district, all the stuff. And they don't really want to. But a draft of sorts happens, they cast lots, and these people are conscripted into service, and that service is moving back into Jerusalem. And here's what verse number 2 says. Verse number 2 says, the people blessed all the men that willingly offered themselves to dwell at Jerusalem. The people see that 10% are selected, and they follow through. And they say, we're going to go. We will inhabit the city. We will try to work to make it so that it flourishes. And the people give them praise for it. Verse number 6 says that the people that did this at the end of the verse, that they were valiant. They saw a valiancy. They saw a courage. They saw a willingness to sacrifice for the mission in the people that were willing to pull up shop and move. And they said, that's commendable. That's something that's praiseworthy. Here they are, these people that are basically saying, I'm willing to, but I don't want to. It's not my first choice. It's not my preference. I'm kind of praying that the lot falls on somebody else and not me. But if this is what the mission needs, count me in. We're here and we want to see things go forward. You would put it this way, perhaps. It wasn't their preference to move to Jerusalem, but the mission needed it so that they were willing. Now, there's a mindset here that is a very valuable mindset. You apply a mindset like this, where you're honest enough to say, that's not my desire zone, that's not my preference, that's not my first choice, it really isn't what I would prefer, but if it needs doing, I'll do it. You apply that mindset, and that will serve you well over and over and over again. You apply that mindset to your job, where you're an employee who has opinions, who can speak up, who can vocalize and say, hey, I wouldn't prefer to do that. That's not my first choice. That's a little scary. It's outside of my comfort zone. I don't know if that's exactly what fits me. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, if it needs doing, I'll do it. I'm willing. Count me in. If you need to shift my role, if you need to add something else to my plate, if you need to somehow rearrange things, I'm in. You take that mindset versus that's not my job. Well, you don't pay me to do that. Find somebody else. One will serve you well, and one will be counterproductive. You take this mindset and apply it to a home. This mindset is essential for a home. If you have any sort of inkling that you want your home to be a place where the emotional temperature in the home is one that is warm and joyous and inviting, as most people would want. Most people don't want their home to be a battlefield where everyone's at each other's throats and yelling and constantly barking. If you have any sort of vision for your house to be a place where things are like clean and organized and they're put together and you take care of your stuff, and there's a family dinner where people sit around a table regularly and you talk and you laugh and you share and you eat and you commune with each other, if you have any sort of vision for that, it takes a lot of people in that home to have a mindset that is, I don't really want to, but I'm willing to. It takes somebody probably to say, don't really want to make dinner. It's not my first choice. I'd rather do some other stuff, but I will make dinner if I need to. Nobody wants to take out the trash. Very few people want to mow the grass. Very few people want to have discipline with the kids so that there can be some sort of structure and some sort of consequences. Like, there's lots of things that are not desirable for parents that you have to begin to embody from an early stage with your children. Like, when they first come home and they're screaming at 3 a.m., nobody wants to get out of bed and nurse the child or change the diaper or somehow get them back to sleep. But it takes someone who has the wherewithal and the maturity to say, I don't want to, but if it needs doing, I'm going to do it. And if parents can embody that with their children and eventually push that mindset down into the children, the home can become a very, very cohesive, beautiful, enjoyable space where now even the 10-year-old or the teenager begins to say, you know what, I don't want to take out the trash, but somebody has to. I guess I'll do it. I'm willing to. Right? This sort of tension exists with people because we're taught by and large in our culture to follow our heart and only do what we desire to do. And if you live by that, it's going to be bad. Like you'll probably end up in jail and not doing anything productive. You have to, at some points in time, say, I don't want to, but I need to. Somebody needs to. So it may as well be me. This is a mindset that is beautiful in a church. When church members can begin to first distinguish between their preferences and essential and begin to identify their preferences as merely that, as preferences. We all have preferences, don't we? All of us have musical tastes or preferences. All of us would prefer to park right next to the entrance and not walk a mile. All of us have things that we would prefer, but when you can identify those preferences and then you can go a step further and put those preferences on the table as somewhat negotiable, that like, you know what, this is my preference, but my preference doesn't come first, the mission comes first. That's a beautiful moment for a church family. They said in verse 2 that this mindset was commendable because people were willing to put their preferences to the side and do what was important for the mission. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge and to give you all credit for, in so many instances over the last 12 months, being willing to shelf your preference but put the mission first. I think about these last 12 months as we're growing, as we're building, as the facility is disrupted with construction. There have been so many times where we have asked you to do something that probably wasn't in your desire zone, but you were willing to do it because we needed it done. I think about asking some of you groups to not just switch like your leader or your group format, but your time altogether, and saying, we need you to switch from the first hour to the second hour so that we can change and put more people in the first service and balance the services out because we're running out of chairs. I think about some of the parking that we've asked you all to park in muddy grass or off in Timbuktu or behind or in the snowy gravel. Or there have been services where 50 or 60 of you have parked at Oberg and been shuttled here because we're out of parking. Nobody wants to wake up an extra 15 or 20 minutes, park their car at Oberg, get on a shuttle with people, shuttle to church, and then have to shuttle back. Nobody desires that, but many of you were willing and you raised your hand and said, count me in. If it needs doing, I'll do it. We'll create some space here and create some parking for some people. That's commendable. It's a beautiful thing when we start to have a mentality that is, you know what, Easter, we're going to have 3 services. That means we're all going to be here earlier. That means we need more volunteerism. We have an extra service to staff. That's not exactly easy or fun per se, but hey, I'm willing to do it. Even our schedule as a church, there have been a number of things that we really wanted to do, but looking at the facility and what was happening or looking at the schedule and all the extra stuff that's on people's plates right now, it was like, you know what, I don't know if this is the year to have a marriage retreat and to spend time and attention on that, or there's not an Easter egg hunt because the field is torn up. There's all of these things that happen where it's like, oh, well, I would prefer to have that. I would prefer to do that, but sometimes those preferences have to be set to the side for the mission. You get the point? This is not just a beautiful mindset. I would argue this is a Christ-centered mindset. I don't know how to put the garden other than this. Jesus prayed in Gethsemane, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. I think that you could accurately paraphrase that as, I don't really want to do it this way. I have no desire to be tortured to death. But if it needs doing, I'll do it. Was that not his mindset? He's saying this is not my preference. He preferred to redeem us and to love us and to save us, certainly. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But he certainly preferred not to be tortured to death. But he was willing to do it because it's what the mission required. This sort of mindset is a beautiful mindset for God's people, and they exemplify it in such an extraordinary way that people say you should get some credit and some attaboys, and thank God for those people that were willing to step up. Even though it was a lot that fell on them, they still were willing to do it. Verse number 3. Now these are the chief of the province that dwelt in Jerusalem. It's going to, over the next few verses, tell you many people who begin to dwell in Jerusalem, but it's sure to note at the end of verse number 3, but the cities of Judah dwell everyone in his possession in their cities, to wit, Israel, the priests, the Levites, the Nethinims. The Nethinims are the temple servants. They do kind of lower level jobs around the temple. And the children of Solomon's servants, meaning a couple things. Number one, there were still 90% of people that were outside of Jerusalem, and those cities were still inhabited. It also goes to show that those cities were diverse. They didn't pull all the priests or all the Levites or all the temple servants into Jerusalem. Many of them still remained in the community at large, but then it's going to tell you who it was that moves into Jerusalem. I'm going to read a couple verses to give you a taste of this and let you see that it takes a village. Here it is, verse number 4. At Jerusalem dwelt certain of the children of Judah and the children of Benjamin. Now it's going to list for you first the children of Judah, the family names of people who decided that they would be willing to move into Jerusalem. Athiah, the son of Uzziah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Amariah, the son of Shephatiah, the son of Mahiliel, the children of Perez, verse 5, and Maaseiah, the son of Baruch, the son of Kolhozah, the son of Haziah, the son of Adiah, the son of Jorib, the son of Zechariah, the son of Shaloni. Just if you would, humor me and scan down through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20, 25, 30, 35. You're going to see that the names keep going. Am I going to read all of them to you? Some of you are praying not. And then you feel unspiritual. Am I hoping that he doesn't read the Bible? It's okay. You're not unspiritual. You're just like everyone. We're all the same. They say that church members want pastors to preach on Revelation the most, and pastors want to preach on Revelation the least. We actually went through Revelation a couple years ago. You can go back, you can verse by verse, chapter by chapter. You can hear those sermons if you want. They're on harvest2u.org. You can go listen to them. I think that the passage that church members want preached on the least, and pastors want to preach on the second least, are the lists. You get to a section like this, and it's like, what's the rest of this sermon going to be like, right? We got a list of names. That's what we got. What are we supposed to do with this? Well, I would tell you what we know to be true. We know that all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. All Scripture, including a list of names, is profitable for doctrine and for reproof and for correction and for instruction in righteousness. What are we supposed to learn from a list of names? Well, let's survey the list and see kind of how it's broken down. It's broken down categorically, and then we'll see what we can learn from a list. It tells you, we just read it, that it gives you some names from the tribe of Judah. Verse number 6 is going to give you names, family names, from the tribe of Benjamin. Verse number 7, excuse me. It starts with the phrase, these are the sons of Benjamin. Verse number 10 starts a new category. It says, of the priests. And it's going to list for you those that had priestly duties, who would minister in the temple proper. Verse number 15, it tells you also of the Levites. And it's going to list those that are of Levitical lineage. You get down to verse number 19, and it begins to break things down by job description. It actually starts in verse number 17, but you see in the beginning of verse 19, one example of this. Moreover, the porters. The porters are the gatekeepers. You would almost think of them as security guards. Verse number 21, it's sure to tell you that the Nethinims dwelt in Ophel. Ophel is a particular section of the city of Jerusalem, and it's telling you that there were some people, like these temple servants, who did not move out into the communities at large, but they actually were in Jerusalem. They just kind of stayed there, even though the city was torn down. Verse number 25, you move away from the city and those who moved in, and you toggle back to the villages that are in the region of Judah. And it begins from verse 25 down to verse 36 to tell you about the different cities that were in the region that there were people that were dwelling in. Now, what are we going to learn from a list? Well, let me give you a few lessons from a list. I don't know that I can zoom into any one particular name and give you from that one particular name. Zechariah. Well, here in that name, we find doctrine and reproof and correction and instruction and righteousness from this one name. But you can zoom out from the 30,000-foot view of this list, and you can certainly learn and apply some things. For example, organization and order matters in God's work. You can't give any time and attention to understand this list and come away with an idea that it was less than organized. You find them organized by their ancestry, you find them organized by their job descriptions, you find them organized by where they dwelt, but there was extreme organization that is here. And while we may not have any particular joy in reading these names, you do have to understand that these names served a purpose. Those that were a few generations removed from this list of names would have, number one, had supreme delight to search the name and look for granddaddy or look for my ancestry. And we also have to understand that in this day and age, you were given credentials and opportunities not based off of your resume and what you had accomplished in your life, but based off of your pedigree and what your ancestors had done and how they had sacrificed. So for many people, for a lot of years, even to this day, there still would be some that would say this list serves as an example of who my family is and what we stand for and the sacrifice that we're willing to make and the sacrifices that pay dividends in the long run. Because I don't know if you know this, but since this day right here, Jerusalem has never been the same. Jerusalem has never gone back to a decimated ghost town after these people put their stamp on it. Jerusalem has changed hands in terms of who was conquering or ruling the city, and there's been debates and all sorts of things, but you can, to this day, go to the city of Jerusalem and walk around a flourishing, thriving city that is filled with people and homes, and yes, there's lots of military on the streets with automatic weapons, sure, but there's businesses and there's shops and there's all kinds of stuff because people were willing to go see the city flourish again, and it begins to take life. So this list of names, while we are thousands of years removed from it, and the majority of us in this room do not come from Jewish ancestry but are Gentile, and so it means a little less than to us, think of it this way. Think of it as if your grandmother migrated to America through Ellis Island, and you get to go to Ellis Island, and there you get to look at the list of names of the people who signed their name and the date of when they came to America's shores, you would have a little tingly, you'd have some sort of sentiment or feeling when you found grandma's name on the list, would you not? And you would want to know, well, who signed after her and who signed before her, who was in line with her. You'd have an intrigue and a curiosity that would possess you, okay? This existed and still exists for many Jewish people, that there's an intrigue in this list. That's not here for us, but it can teach us that there's organization, at least in part, and organization matters in God's work. We know this to be true of the church. We know that the church, it's said that everything that's done in the church should be done decently and in order. There can be order that is so orderly that it becomes complete machinery, and you start to discount perhaps the Spirit of God and His movement. But as a rule of thumb, being organized and having a calendar and announcing things beforehand when they're going to happen, or having music that's like practiced before today, that's a good thing. I'm grateful somebody picked music months ago, put it on an order of service probably months ago, that someone printed sheet music, that someone gave it to the group, that they started to practice that music a long time ago, that they practiced it again this week, afresh and anew, and that they were able to deliver it to us. Because without that organization, the quality would be at an extreme deficit, right? So there's organization that's happening here. You need that in the work of God. Absolutely you do. How many of you are list people, just out of curiosity? You're organizers, you're list people, okay? I'm of your tribe, right? I have lists for my list for my list. We make all those lists for organization's sake. That's not a bad thing. Number two, you can learn that God's work is never done by one superstar. The book is called Nehemiah because it's about the central figure, Nehemiah. I take that back. The central figure is God. But humanly speaking, the central figure is Nehemiah. But you begin to learn very quickly, especially after you exit chapter 6, that there's a lot that needs done, and Nehemiah can't do it all. There is no one-man band in God's work. That while he has leaders that he uses in unique ways, there are so many people that have to step up and serve and form a team and work together cohesively, and you begin to see a lot of people that are there to show up and to do their jobs and to help rebuild the city, because Nehemiah couldn't do it all by himself. Some people think that Christianity is like the cartoons they watched as kids, that there's this evil villain called the devil and he needs fighting. But all of us, we're just normal Christians, we're just pedestrians, we really don't stand a chance. So we need the Superman Christian or the Spider-Man Christian or the Batman Christian, whoever he is or she is, to come in and to be the one who's going to be the leader that God's appointed, that his hand is on, and they're going to do all the work and we'll be delivered because of them. Nah. It takes a village. Even the best of the best need help. Jordan needed Pippin and Rodman and Kerr. Potter needed Weasley and Granger and Dumbledore. Even in music, there is no one-man band. Lennon needed some people around him. Ringo Starr. Right? You have to have people. You have to have help. You have to have support. This is a testimony to the reality that you are not going to have one superstar that does it all, but that God wants to use a collective. He wants to use a whole. This should do a couple things. This is profitable for correction and reproof, because some people are prone to think that they are the cat's meow, that they are like all of it and a bag of potato chips. You know what I'm talking about? The people that think that they're God's gift to humanity, or they're a gift to God himself. Like, God, you're lucky I'm on your team. You got a good one in me. That can creep into people who see themselves as indispensable, whether they are leading a team in a church or a group in a church. It can, to be honest, the number one group that it creeps into is the pastors in the churches. We live in a day and age culturally, like the waters that we swim in are waters that are very self-aggrandizing. Self-promotion is at the core of our culture right now, because if you want to get credit for it at work, or if you want to gain followers on social media, like you have to give yourself credit. Very few people run down a basketball court, hit a three, and point to God anymore and give some sort of credit to God. Most of them beat their chest or brush their shoulder or say that someone's too small or somehow say that they did it. This is normal to be self-promoting. It's normal. It should not be normal, but it is, sadly, that narcissism in some sort of form begins to take shape in people and marriages and pastors and churches, and people begin to see themselves as too big. Their head becomes too inflated. And this is a testimony that should not happen, that it does take a village and that nobody is indispensable. This is oftentimes a good reminder for me. As a pastor here at this church, I'm reminded that there are pastors that have come before me, and there will be pastors who come after me, Lord willing. Hopefully that's a long time from now, and we got another 20 years in front of us or something. But I know that I'm one piece of the puzzle. I'm running my section of the race, but it's not as though God needs me. If Mark gets hit by a bus, there are other pastors that can take my place. That can happen. It's important to remember that so that we don't have too high a view of ourselves. It's also important to remember this, lest we have too low a view of ourselves. Some of you are not prone to be narcissistic, but you're prone to be so self-deprecating that you think that what you do is piddly sticks and nothing. That you contribute nothing, that you're just a drop in the bucket, that your service is trivial, that you're not that important. And this goes to show you that there's lots of names here. All of them had a part to play, and all of them contributed something. All of those drops in the bucket amounted to a full bucket, and that was really important. So don't think too high of yourself, nor think too low of yourself. It takes a village, and everyone's work is important. And that brings us to point number 3, that the ordinary doesn't lack importance. Just because it's ordinary and not special, by special I mean parting the Red Sea, raising the dead, some sort of miracle. Just because it's ordinary does not mean that it lacks importance. What these people set out to do was very ordinary, very repetitive. It was not filled with flashiness. It was not dramatic. It's not flamboyant. They just moved somewhere and started doing their jobs. That's what happened. You say, well, what do they start doing? Well, let's look at a few of these that are inside of the text. And I'll do my best. Give me a wink and a nod on this, okay? I'm going to do my best to draw maybe a parallel to a job that would be in our church, but know that they're not entirely apples to apples, okay? None of them are, but some of them you can at least try to draw some sort of parallel. So I'm going to try and see what we have here, right? You have priests. That's verse number 10. These are the people that have dedicated their lives to the service of God and the support of God's people, fund them and care for them so that they can organize and lead in worship and in the word. And you would have ministers, we could put it that way. You would have pastors, you would have maybe even a paid staff of a church, people that are there dedicating themselves to this full time. You also have in verse number 16, the end of the verse, a particular set of Levites who had oversight, quote, of the outward business of the house of God. Now, there were both deeply practical, pragmatic, just like making stone pavers and washing dishes sort of stuff that was there. You also had some version of ministerial duties. But people, they needed people, apparently. There was a whole group of them that cared for the external stuff. It's not trivial to mow a lawn at a church or to shovel the sidewalks and salt them when it snows outside, or to make sure that things are clean, or to be part of a parking lot crew that parks people, or to hold the door so that someone can get in. Things that we would say, well, yeah, that's not that special. It's not like I have to give the sermon today. No, that is special. That amounts to something, that matters for something. Those things need doing. And there were people who cared for this sort of stuff. It tells us in verse number 17, the middle of the verse, he was the principal to begin the thanksgiving in prayer. Meaning when they would have their service, there was a portion of the service that was the Thanksgiving portion, and that was preceded by a prayer, and there was someone who played a small part in the order of service for worship. I think about all the people who play bits and parts in the worship service that we have to try to give honor and glory to God. And I am thankful for them. I'm thankful for someone who stands up and gives announcements. You got to know what's going on. You're not going to know if the picnic's happening if we don't tell you. I'm thankful someone will do that. They didn't have AVL people back then, but I'm grateful for the audio visual lighting people who play a part in the order of service, who know when to fire a slide above my head so that you can see it, or know when to turn my mic on so that I'm not talking without any amplification, or know how to like put these pieces together. I'm grateful for people who play parts in our order of service. Those jobs matter. I would say especially to the AVL people, they get like 0 credit when things go right because it's just supposed to go right. But they get the ire of the whole community if something goes wrong, if it's too loud, if something doesn't turn on. And let's be grateful for all of the times, like probably millions of times, where things go off without a hitch that we just take for granted, but it takes time and labor and expertise and real work and diligence for them to do that. It mentions another group of people who had a part inside of the services. In verse number 22, it says of the sons of Asaph, the singers. These group of people that were ordained in David's time to bring the music and the worship to the worship service. Thank God for all of our musicians who bless us. I'm so grateful for them. I'm grateful for those of you that kind of on the special days, you come in as kind of backfill and extras on Easter and Christmases and Good Fridays. And when we have 100 musicians that fill the stage and spill over to the floor, man, those services are special. But every week, the choir and the orchestra and those who take time and they use their voices and they use their instruments and they use their gifts, that is a blessing. You say, well, they're just one of like 50 people in the choir singing. That doesn't seem that special. No, that is special. That's important. It mentions in verse number 19, moreover, the porters. The best parallel we could give would be a security team. These were the people that stood guard at the gate and made sure that there wasn't riffraff coming in to cause some sort of malicious event inside of the city. Thank God for the people that stand guard. I'm very grateful for Officer Mayberry, who's here this morning, and the officers that are here every single week. I'm grateful for the team. Some of you got little earbuds in your ears right now, and I don't know if you're packing or not, but you're here and you're keeping us safe, and you're making sure that everything is going the way that it needs to. And then there's like 50% of you who are packing and you're not on the security team. We're grateful for you too. For the people that want to keep us safe and guard us and protect us, like all of these are jobs, and there's so many other jobs that we could enumerate, but it goes to show that all of these amount to something. They matter when it's all said and done. I was thinking about specific people, and I probably shouldn't mention specific people, but the Lord brought these to mind. I thought about Dale Hopkins. Dale's in the first service on the back row every single Sunday, unless Dale's like on a mission trip with us, because he goes on some of those. Dale shows up, he greets at this door right here. Dale sets out the communion cups every month when we have communion. He's here early, make sure the cups are out. And Dale takes prayer requests in the group that's meeting right now on the other side of this wall. There's 40 of them over there having group right now. And he takes prayer requests. To the best of my knowledge, Dale has never led a team. Dale has never led a group or taught the second grade boys Sunday school class, but he does something consistently and faithfully every single week. He does a few things every single week, and it matters. It makes a difference. You may not know this, but I thought about Marc Vicker and Don Shawley. They have, for the last couple weeks, been here, both of them, 8 hours a day, working on your behalf, grinding and polishing the concrete floors they're in the new construction. They're up on the second floor right now. It's where they started. They raised their hand. We asked them if they'd be willing to. 2 retired guys who said, we will give like months of our time to the church to be a blessing. They flew to Tennessee. They got some training on how to operate a grinder and a polisher, because we said, I think we can buy this and do it ourselves and save a boatload of money. And when we're done with it, we'll sell it and we'll get some money back for the used equipment. And we can, instead of paying $4, $5, $6, $7 a square foot to grind and polish on the concrete, why don't we do it ourselves? And they said, we'll do it. And that polisher, it's huge, but it moves at about this pace. And I'm not kidding. It is like a turtle, and they are just the whole day just moving around. And I mean, it's like 6 passes they have to do on every single strip of floor, and they're blessing you with faithful service. And if you're retired and you want to help them and you want to be an extra hand, let me know. We'll put you in with them, and we'll gladly add you to the list. But I could go on and on and on with so many of you who give of yourself in what some would call ordinary servitude, but I would call it extraordinary, in sacrificial ways. That's not small. That's not trivial. And these people are enumerated here, and they got praise for it. They're even called valiant because of it, because they're willing to do it. Number 4, and lastly, what do you learn from a list? God fills what he builds. God had built the city. Sure, Nehemiah had a huge part to play. Sure, the people actually did the manual labor, but it was the good hand of God that had built the city. And he doesn't intend for it to sit built empty. He intends to fill what he builds. Now, there's a lot of applications I could make here, but I'll give you one really, really brief one. If in your life God is building something, perhaps even something that's been torn down and in shambles for a while that he wants to reestablish and build back up, he's going to fill that. He's going to fill it with the Spirit. He's going to fill it with purpose. He's going to fill it with joy. God doesn't build things, whether practically in a city or in your life, so that they can sit there unutilized on a shelf collecting dust. He builds us and he works in us to accomplish things for his glory so that he can use us. There's tremendous purpose in God working and at times even reorganizing and restructuring the orders of our heart, the priorities of our schedule. When he begins to do that, it is for a reason. And the reason is so that he can fill it and he can bless it. Now, I'll close with this. While I am grateful for this list, it is a beautiful list. It is a significant list, I would dare say. In some way, I do think that it points to the most significant list that's ever existed. There is one list in the whole of the universe that supersedes every other. I'm not sure if you know what it is. It's not the list you made for your groceries. Hopefully not while I was speaking. It's not the list of names on the Declaration of Independence. It's not the list of Super Bowl MVPs, and it's not the list of the roster of Harvest Baptist Church. There is a list that God keeps. It's a list of names. List of names that he has written down in what is called the Lamb's Book of Life. It's a list of the redeemed. It's a list of all the people who have put their faith in Jesus and are redeemed, who will have entrance to heaven. And if your name's on the list, you get in. And if your name's not on the list, you don't get in. And I'm not only grateful that a list exists, that there are select individuals who will, in fact, make it into heaven, but I'm grateful for how you can get your name on that list. You cannot get your name on the list in Nehemiah 11. That ship has sailed. But you can get your name on the list that is the list of the redeemed. You can. Now, it's not about what you do. I don't know if you know this. It's not at all about what you do. It's not about your resume. It is 100% about referral. It's a list of people who have put their faith in the Lord Jesus, who have said, I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. And I know that you died for those sins, and I believe that you rose from the dead, and I'm putting my faith and trust in you to redeem me, to forgive me, to give me a home in heaven, an entrance into heaven. I am trusting in you and you alone exclusively. And those who have done that are on the list. I don't know if you are or are not. Some of you I do, but some of you I don't. But I would be bold enough to ask you this morning, is your name on that list? Do you know that it is? Like, do you know? No. Not like 90% sure, I think so, I hope so, probably, but like I know that it is. Because if you don't, it's as simple as trusting in the Lord Jesus. He will do all the rest if you'll put your faith in him.
I pray that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. And if this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then please just let this broadcast be a blessing. There are no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, the Our Father, as some call it. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Sunday.